everybody. I wanted to thank you all for joining us this morning at our first ever CEF virtual event. Just want to say thank you for joining us for this and being our first virtual event guinea pigs and bearing with us through any difficulties that we might encounter. So it's my pleasure to introduce our special guests this morning who have taken the time to come out and support CEF by speaking here. And we are joined by Paul Escala, who is the Senior Director and Superintendent of Catholic Schools. And then we have Antonio Felix, our special guest for this morning, who's the Director of Place Corps and CAST at Loyola Marymount University School of Education. And I'm also really proud to introduce Sandra Garcia. She is CEF's Communications and Graphic Design Coordinator, and she's an alumna of Bishop Alemany High School and of CEF. The Catholic Education Foundation provides tuition awards to thousands of students every year, and that's thanks to the support of our donors. Many of you are here today supporting us. Thank you. And we hope that this program can provide a glimpse into our Catholic schools to help you get to know the students and the families who we serve. And we'll be back on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. every week. And we're gonna gather guests from throughout the Archdiocese to speak to how things are going in their schools, how things are going with their families, and particularly about the transitions that they've made to distance learning. So now I'd like to introduce Paul Escala, the Senior Director of and Superintendent of Catholic Schools. Paul?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you to the Catholic Education Foundation, Allison and Katie, for bringing us all together this morning. Happy Easter to all of you and your families. And though we are all living through extraordinary times, we can all be heartened by the fact that our faith continues to be an enduring core of our continued optimism, hope, and faith for the future. The reality is that this crisis has impacted Catholic education in ways that cannot even be articulated at this moment. I mean, I think that it's safe to say in the last 30 days, and it's been about 30 days since we made the announcement that we were transitioning to distance learning in the largest Catholic school system in the United States, that over the last 30 days, it has been moments of extraordinary will, grit, and perseverance, overcoming extraordinary challenges in the face of certain practical realities that our families are facing and struggling with. This paradox of our mission confronting these economic realities is something that is squarely on the minds of all of our leaders and all of our supporters and all of our families. So I want to share a few things with you, because I am asked often, how are our schools doing? And that is of course, a loaded question and is not a straight line. What I can tell you is what we know about what our ministry is doing at this time. We have served since the beginning of this crisis, for example, over 300,000 meals to needy students across the Archdiocese at 40 different locations. On a daily basis, we're serving about 11,000 meals, breakfast and lunch, across 40 sites. So the cumulative number of meals is over 330,000 at this point. We've deployed over 20,000 iPad devices to our students through our relationship with Sprint, and we're working diligently to expand that. About 90% of our schools transitioned within really the first week, some within 48 or 72 hours to a distance learning platform. We've had nearly 100% of participation through our academic excellence team, providing daily professional development to school leaders throughout the Archdiocese. And, you know, quite dissimilar to our friends in the public sector, we are not a school district. And I think that to a large degree, people are learning those nuances. Our schools, particularly our parish schools, are local community schools, where our pastors and our principals are our frontline leaders with our teachers and our families. We have localized decision-making in those environments. For half of our high schools, they are either private, religious order owned and run, or parish affiliated, and about 21 of them fall under the Archdiocese directly in our department, the Department of Catholic Schools. So that difference has some great advantages in local decision-making and empowerment and entrepreneurialism, but it also creates some challenges when it comes to larger systemic questions like what does attendance look like, and how are kids managing this new environment of teaching and learning. So we're working closely with our schools and our school leaders to really understand what teaching and learning is looking like these days, what participation and frequency of engagement looks like. How many of our schools are using a pure online platform, and how many are doing a hybrid approach, and how many are using more analog materials to support learning. I think what is fundamentally different about what we are doing versus what our peers in public schools are doing is that we never stopped teaching. We never stopped teaching. We never stopped ministering. Many of our peers had to suspend not just in-person instruction, but suspend education for weeks. In fact, some districts are not resuming instruction until next week, which means kids have been essentially not learning for going on 6 weeks. That did not happen in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. And while we are a loosely knit enterprise, one consistent norm across the board is that we never stop teaching. So wherever you're at in the grand scheme of this incredible ministry of ours, God has been present in everything that we've been doing, whether it's serving the poor or ensuring that kids who could not afford tuition are still able to learn has been a priority of ours. And it's really been centered on three: health and safety of our students, our staff, and our families, putting that first; ensuring the continuity and integrity of our academic program and our ministry; and third, also sustaining our schools through this crisis financially. And I'll end on that note. Nearly 90% of all of our parish schools have successfully applied, and we're now waiting for answers, through the Paycheck Protection Program with the Small Business Administration. All of our archdiocesan high schools have applied for the Paycheck Protection Program with the Small Business Administration. This program will allow for the continuation of our payrolls for the next 8 weeks if they're successful. Now, if you read the papers, you know that there are some limitations on this program, and that not all applicants will in fact be successful in achieving the full amount, because there is not enough money to go around, and God willing, Congress can pull it together and get more money into this program, not just for us, but for many other small businesses who are suffering right now. But that only addresses part of the problem. Fundamentally, for this ministry to be successful in the long term, it's going to require more resources. But it's also going to require us to think differently about how we operate our ministry, how we deliver our ministry. fundamentally must change, because the way that we've been doing things in the past is over. And whenever we come out of this, and we will come out of it, our world is going to be different. And the way that children and families and teachers and principals in schools navigate these waters is going to determine whether or not they're going to be successful in the next school year and the school years afterwards. If you want to see what the world looks like after a major disaster, all you have to do is look at New Orleans. After Katrina, fundamentally education changed in New Orleans. And I think that we're seeing a Katrina moment here across the world. The question for me is, and for all of us leaders, and I'll leave it on this, is what does Catholic education look like in a during and post COVID-19 crisis environment? How do we minister to kids online in an effective way? How do we create hybrid programs where we're modifying school calendars and structures and engagement socially? All of these challenges are right at the front of our minds and on the doorstep. And so we're challenged as educators and supporters of Catholic education to really be the leaders right now, as we always have been. Since 1851, Catholic education has been alive here in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, and we're bound and determined to see another nearly 200 years of Catholic education here as well. But that's only going to come as a result of our ingenuity, our entrepreneurialism, and our innovation. So we have to challenge ourselves to think radically different about what our ministry is going to look like, not just at the end of this school year, but the beginning of the next and onwards. So we're encouraged, we remain optimistic and hopeful. That's who we are as Catholics, and we will remain so. But there's no question about it. The challenges that we are facing today are real and are going to fundamentally change how we do things moving forward. So I want to thank again Catholic Education Foundation, Katie, Allison, Teresa, Andrew, everybody at CEF for bringing us together this morning and sharing some anecdotes with you.
Well, thank you so much, Paul. We really appreciate that. And just as a reminder to everyone, if you have any questions, you can use the chat feature, and all those questions are going to go straight to Johnny, who will collect them, and we can address them later in the program. And so now I'm really, really excited to introduce Sandra Garcia. Sandra is behind the scenes in almost everything for CEF development. Whenever you see an awesome graphic, brochure, invitation, or our impact report, it was all Sandra. Sandra graduated from Bishop Alemany High School in the San Fernando Valley and received CEF tuition awards throughout her time there. She's an awesome example of a CEF scholar who chose to give back by working for CEF. And she's here with us today to say a few words. So, Sandra.
Good morning, everyone. Like Katie mentioned, I'm the Communications and Graphic Design Coordinator at CEF. I have been blessed enough to have a Catholic education. It really provided me a community that I didn't see in public school. And one of the main things that this community has taught me is to give back. We see it definitely in times of need, even now, even more. And one of the ways I wanted to give back is working alongside these beautiful people and help others also achieve a Catholic education. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. We're really glad to have you here today, and we're really glad to have you as part of CEF. So now we are absolutely thrilled to introduce Antonio Felix, and he's our special guest for this morning's event. Antonio is a South Central Los Angeles native and a longtime advocate for Catholic schools in Los Angeles inner city. He currently serves as the director of the Loyola Marymount University School of Education, PLACE Corps, which stands for Partners in Los Angeles Catholic Education, a nationally recognized Catholic teacher service program housed within LMU's Center for Catholic Education. He oversees PLACE Corps' mission to place novice teachers in primarily under-resourced schools in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, Diocese of Orange, and Diocese of San Bernardino through the program's 3 pillars: professional development, community living, and spiritual growth. Antonio is also the director of the LMU CAST, Catholic Archdiocesan School Teachers Program, a Master of Arts and Preliminary Teaching Credential program designed for full-time Catholic school educators. Prior to joining LMU, Antonio served at Nativity Catholic School, an elementary school located in the Vermont Slauson community of South Los Angeles, in many capacities. First as the junior high math and science teacher, later as the director of marketing development and the principal. Antonio, thank you so much for joining this morning. We're so excited to have you. So first of all, Antonio,
Yeah, hi,
are you
Katie.
having coffee or tea this morning?
I'm having coffee in my very cool LMU mug. Go Lions!
Cheers. I have coffee as well. I have my Alice in Wonderland. There's no use believing in impossible things. And then the Queen says, sometimes I've believed in as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. So I thought that would be good for me to start with today.
Oh, wonderful.
So we have a few questions for you. And first of all, could you tell us, why did you choose to be an educator in Catholic schools?
Thanks, Katie. I think whenever I get asked that question, I kind of redirect it to a much more important question, which is why I've chosen to stay in Catholic education. I think many people go into teaching and specifically Catholic education for many reasons. But the main reason why I have stayed for nearly 20 years now is first, how important faith and Christ are personally in my life. I have never been part of anything other than family, where Christ is in the center of everything that I do. And that's what I saw early on as a substitute teacher in multiple Catholic schools. And eventually when I became a full-time teacher, I stayed in a community that embraced me the most, and also that gave me a glimpse of Christ in the students' eyes, in the families that we served, and most importantly, in the colleagues that I served with. And which is another reason why I stayed in Catholic education, is because I've got a chance to work with other individuals who are who value the same principles that I uphold in my life, those of service, commitment to their faith, and most importantly, putting Christ in the center of all that they do.
You oversee many student teachers at schools in some of the lowest income areas of Los Angeles, which are also the same schools that receive funding from CEF. So could you describe right now the ways that your student teachers are adapting to distance learning?
Yeah, thanks, Kate. First of all, I really want to highlight and recognize the wonderful work all the teachers in Catholic schools are doing. Paul very just eloquently talked about how they answered this call to serve in such a fast turnaround. I have had the opportunity to see how friends and family members have responded in other sectors in education, but I'm so proud to stand with the teachers in the Catholic schools and witness firsthand the work they've done. But particularly the teachers that I work with, the main things I've seen is that, well, first of all, we all know, hopefully everyone on this Zoom call knows that the number one, I guess, skill set in a teacher's resume is adaptability. And then when you include a Catholic school teacher's skill set, that's like to the second power or third. So again, the teachers gave witness of that ability to just adapt to this call. My placers, which is one set of students or student teachers that I work with, have been very selfless. These teachers live with each other in community. They were all given the opportunity to go home with their families, but the majority of them stayed in their communities. And when asked why, they really referenced 2 reasons. One, it's first of all their home and their commitment to their students. It's to their residents and their community pillar. But then secondly, they see each other as support. And what better way to get through a crisis like this than going home to a house full of educators who have your back, who recognize and understand exactly what you're going through, and then most importantly are there to share best practices. And a lot of those best practices are the ones that many of those that Paul shared. And I've received pictures from some of our placers where they have converted some of the vacant convent rooms into classrooms, where they have bulletin boards in the background, just making it an inviting space to the students who do log on and get to interact with their teachers through Zoom. They brought their classroom or their school to their homes.
So as a parent to some school-aged kids, you have another perspective into distance learning and into Catholic schools. So how's it going right now with your family and their experience with virtual school?
Well, I have no excuses with my wife. She says, you're a teacher, so there's no reason why I shouldn't have to pitch in. So that's been the first thing. And I'm very grateful that I've had that background so I could support them. But I've always thought that my strongest commitment to Catholic education is sending my own children to the schools that I strongly believe in. Both of my kids attend schools that are in highly supported by CEF. They're in inner cities in Los Angeles. My oldest, who is a freshman at Bishop Connolly Our Lady of Loretto High School, I'm super excited and just proud of how wonderfully equipped the school was to respond to this. I have not seen any opportunities or steps in her ability to continue to grow, not just in her obviously academic enhancement and learning, but in her collaboration with her teachers and being able to have still a social relationship with her classmates. Bishop Connolly, what they do every day, my daughter's expected to be online and see her teachers and her classmates. They haven't lost a step. In fact, I feel she's being challenged even more through just the rigorous and robust curriculum that they continue to offer. I'm super happy that she goes to school there. And at the end of the day, one less worry I have. I know that's difficult to say as a parent, but when Catholic schools tell us that they partner with the families and that we're part of their school community, it's not just a tagline on a poster. It's Bishop Connolly has shown firsthand how true that is. And my other boy, he's in 5th grade and he attends St. Columkill School, another school that's highly supported by CEF, has continued to be challenged and grow in his own academic ability, and it's great. I'm so happy they're in Catholic schools.
I think we have some representatives here from Bishop Connolly, I saw, so.
Very cool.
I bet they appreciate that shout out. What do you perceive to be the difference that's offered by Catholics? You said a little bit about this before, but what is the difference that Catholic schools offer?
I loved how Paul kind of painted a picture of what's going to happen after this. There's definitely a lot of justified anxiety and kind of fear of what comes next. But I think this is a wonderful opportunity for Catholic schools to once again show that Catholic school difference. We are often asked that as Catholic educators, what's the Catholic school difference? Well, we're living it right now. The way Bishop Connolly has embraced our family and put my daughter's education as a continued priority, the way St. Columkill continues to reach out to us. It's a parish school, so our pastor has been very involved and continues to put faith at the center of what we do there. I think when all this is over, the families are going to think back and say, in our darkest times, in our most vulnerable times, my little Catholic school was there for me. They were there to embrace us. They were there to work with us when times got difficult. And most importantly, they never left us alone. And I think that's the difference that we aren't seeing everywhere. So I'm so blessed to be part of a group of individuals who have put others before themselves. And that's, I think, what has made Catholic schools so appealing for so many generations.
You oversee a lot of teachers in master's programs, student teachers in Place Corps who are both studying, so they're both learning and teaching at the same time. And so I wanted to ask you, what do you or your student teachers, what do you need right now?
I think the Catholic community has done a good job at providing our teachers with resources. In fact, we've seen an abundance of online resources and tools. I think the schools have done a good job at directing the teachers as to what's most doable in their own settings. But I think what they really need at this time specifically the teachers that I work with who tend to serve in the most vulnerable schools in our archdiocese, is that they need that inspiration and that sense of security, knowing that Catholic schools will be there after all this. I'm glad that we're hearing that message now, but I feel that first, starting with our principals, letting them know that they're supported, that these schools will be there to continue to serve the populations that they serve. And then lastly, that they're not alone. Definitely, it would be naive of us to think that prayer shouldn't be the first thing that we should continue to offer them. But I strongly believe that that is what's going to make the difference in keeping these teachers. So I'm so proud that we're continuing to do that, because we want to retain wonderful teachers in our Catholic schools.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the audience?
I'm Liz Mendez, and I'm from St. John of God School in Norwalk. And I have a question specifically for CEF regarding, I know we had talked about this in one of our principal collaborations, but I wondered if maybe you can touch upon it a little bit more. Was we sent we're sending all of our applicants, to be postmarked and mailed to get to you by April 24th. However, is there going to be another track or another group of parents that we can support who are in the midst of losing their jobs? Will that be a CEF category, or will that just be something that we're working with them individually as of now, which we're doing? However, I know, especially in my group of principals, we had talked about, is there a possibility where we can, I don't know if it's through CEF or through the Archdiocese, provide some sort of separate support for the families that are experiencing the loss of jobs from now until June, maybe even as long as August? We're kind of looking long-term for those parents that are coming to us and saying, I'm waiting on my unemployment paperwork, or I have been notified, or I'm pretty sure I'm going to get laid off. So I'm wondering if those conversations are already happening with CEF, or if we're looking at something to provide for those families that will be affected by this in the next 3 months and want to keep their kids in Catholic schools.
That's a really excellent question, Liz. Thank you for bringing that up. So I do know that we're on the development side, and we can speak to the fundraising aspects of CEF. I know that there have been a lot of talks, and there is a lot of change and movement in the way that the applications are being processed and accepted this year, because we lost the opportunity to do a lot of the in-person application days. So I would direct that question to Andrew Garcia he's the senior program officer, to see where they are with that. I know that there was recently a new contact from the programs office that offered a second cycle of application acceptance. But I think questions that are more specific like that, I think you should direct that to programs, and they can tell you how to proceed with those families.
Katie, it's Allison. Paul might be able to address a little bit of that, maybe. I don't want to put him on the spot, but he might be able to address it a little bit. Paul, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm unmuted.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I can approach it from the perspective of what we at the Department of Catholic Schools feel extraordinarily passionate about, and what we've been working with the Office of Development for the Archdiocese of Los Angeles with our philanthropic partners. And that is to raise the level of awareness and make a direct appeal to all of our philanthropic partners that this crisis is substantial, significant to our families, that our goal is to keep all of our families in our schools and to protect our schools from the brunt of this incredible crisis. That's going to require support. monumental support, support that is unprecedented, quite frankly. And those conversations have really started immediately because we knew that as this crisis unfolded and as the days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into months, the economic impact to our families is going to be substantial. So that's going to require a level of support that has been unprecedented. And so we've made an unprecedented ask of our philanthropic partners. And I'm happy to say that we're making progress. And we have already several philanthropic partners who have stepped up. I think that we're also wanting to make sure that we're leveraging every public resource we can. Again, the PPP program could create a really important and significant safety net for our schools and our parishes for the coming 8 weeks. But, you know, as I said earlier, that's the remainder of the school year. What about next year? I'm going to be brutally honest. There's no playbook for this. There's no secret stash of cash that is out there beyond what we already know. Whether it's CEF or our philanthropic partners or the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, you know, like any other entity, nonprofit or even for-profit, there are certain reserves that we hold in place in order to ensure that we have manageable cash flows for 30, 45, 60 days, maybe 90 days. But whether you're a parish school or a high school or the Archdiocese itself, there are limitations on how much and how far those reserves can go without completely undermining an institution's ability to operate concurrently. So when we think about what August looks like, what next year looks like, or what the second year and third year, this reverberates over the next really 36 months. It's going to take more than just CEF. It's going to take more than philanthropy. It's going to take a coalition of everybody, teachers, principals, pastors, families, philanthropy, everyone, to ensure this ministry not just survives, but thrives for children, for the future of our church, for God. And I wish I could sit here and tell you that, you know, if we just had another cycle or we added another program, we could solve for this. But when we look at the numbers, the demands are incredibly large. So we're going to have to really fundamentally think differently about how we deliver our ministry in ways that can, frankly, increase value, increase outcomes, lower costs, so we can actually increase the number of families we're helping. The good news, like I said earlier, is we never stop teaching. Families want to stay with us, and new families want to be with us. We have a school in the Archdiocese that's registered 32 families, new families, since this crisis started. 32. And that is a result of families recognizing that their children were sitting on the sidelines while kids in a Catholic school were learning. And I wish that was the case for every one of our schools. It's not. How do we replicate that? We want to take what they're doing and we want to see what we can do about bringing that to everybody and bringing that at scale. But it's going to require all of us together to do this. And I think that's one thing that we're learning very quickly is counter to the culture that we came out of in this crisis of the immediate gratification culture, the me culture. This is a reminder of our faith and God's reminder to us that we are truly one people and we cannot solve this invisible crisis, this crisis of this virus without being together. And the same issue, and that same goes for our ministry. So I know I'm long-winded, I apologize, but it's essentially that we need to recognize that this challenge is only going to be overcome if we're in this together. And we are working diligently, though, with all of our philanthropy partners to create new avenues for new resources to help those families. Absolutely.
Thank you. We have a couple questions. So we have Janice from San Francisco is joining us, and she asks, how does the Archdiocese see education changing in the fall? And I want to pose that first to Paul, but I also want to ask Antonio a similar question of how does he expect that he'll be changing his program to train teachers, and if he believes that there'll be any changes in their training. So Paul, how do you see education changing?
Well, that is exactly where we want to pivot. We want to, two things that we are doing right now, and you know, with the last 30 days cannot look like the next 30 days, quite frankly. I'm giving you very raw feedback and reflections right now, and I'm speaking not just on behalf of the Department of Catholic Schools, but for all of our school leaders. To suggest that the last 30 days were nothing more than triage is to understate the tremendous amount of heroism and leadership that our teachers, our school staffs, from our custodians to our school secretaries, our instructional aides, our volunteers, our principals and pastors have been doing. It's been extraordinary. But let's face it, humanly speaking, the last 30 days can't look like the next 30 days. We've got to start thinking forward. So how do we end the school year strong? And how do we start the school year smart? Now, if you're a public policy wonk and you're listening to the governor, the mayors, and folks around the country, even our public health officials, talking about what schools are going to look like, I don't think they're wrong. I think that in-person instruction is going to require a level of protocol and procedure around public health that we have not seen before. Now, if you have children, and I've got a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, telling a 4-year-old to stop touching their face or picking their nose or sneeze or whatever, and wash their hands every 5 minutes, that in and of itself is a miracle every day. And thinking about how they go to school with a mask on and have a 6-foot distance from kids who they're used to, getting rough and tumble with or playing with, it seems absolutely foreign. But these are the things that we're going to have to get really good at, and we're going to have to get really smart at. We can absolutely envision a world where we have a new structure to the school day, a new schedule to the school day. Hybrid approaches between distance learning and in-person instruction. All those things are going to be on the table. And what I'm going to be doing here is calling for a task force, a joint task force of high school and elementary school pastors and principals and presidents in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles to come together, facilitated by the Department of Catholic Schools and led by my office, to really start putting those ideas on paper and start thinking about what kind of guidance we can provide to our schools to help them navigate these waters. What resources are they going to need? And every school is gonna probably go about this a little differently in little nuances depending on their scale and their location. But across the board, I think we're going to have a set of guiding principles, protocols, and procedures, from face masks to cleaning protocols, hand washing protocols, distancing protocols, and it's going to be a huge lift. I think we're gonna go back to the days, and not even go back, continue to maybe even elevate the blessing that we have in Catholic education of our silent workforce. It's not so silent, frankly, and that's our volunteers. I think that volunteerism in Catholic schools is going to have to really step up big time. And the good news is that this has always been a hallmark of Catholic education from day one. And we're going to need to see this workforce emerge to help our teachers, help our aides, help our principals in supporting these protocols, because we're going to need to think differently about even classroom space and how we use it, how we're applying technology. So those are the things that are on our collective mind. But we're going to we want to bring our leaders together to have an open dialogue and conversation about this, get their ideas, have this really, from the ground up. And so I'm looking forward to that dialogue happening here in the coming weeks, but also be mindful that we have a school year to finish strong on, and we want to be mindful of that. And the same kind of dialogue is going to be happening through our leadership councils here in the coming weeks as well. So that's my top level thinking today. But I've also learned that things change on a daily basis these days. So I'll put a big asterisk next to that, subject to change. But that's sort of where I see us headed.
So I wanted to give Antonio a chance to respond to that, and then I have a question. Well, first I'm going to give Antonio a chance to respond to that. So, Antonio, how do you think that you're going to be changing instruction for your teachers?
Yeah, just a couple thoughts. I think LMU is always, I think, has done a wonderful job presently in the way we educate our current teachers, our cast and place teachers. So our current model is a hybrid model. So I think that was helpful in itself, being that they were actually engaging on a weekly basis themselves through a type of digital learning platform, where 60% of our class sessions are face-to-face and 40% of those are online. And those online weeks were made up of digital posts, either through writing or video posts that they would do with their classmates. So that's one way I think that we'll continue to support them. But also the biggest question that we have received is, it's wonderful that we've provided all these different resources to implement curriculum, but given these circumstances, a lot of the challenges have been what's happening in the homes where the parents aren't equipped to be able to teach their students, essentially, because in many instances we've asked that the parents collaborate with students in their learning, and that's still I think it was a misconception in many parts that all of our parents are equipped or have the capacity to do that. So I think that's where we're going to focus on, is we feel we do a wonderful job at giving our teachers the instructional tools that they need to implement remote learning. But the next step is going to be, how do you support the families in having them effectively support their children?
Thank you. We have Geri Wendel here, and I wanted to give a shout out to her. Geri is part of Art Trek, which, if you are a principal or teacher in elementary school, you may have heard of. Art Trek provides art classes and teacher training in elementary schools. We've been partnered with them for years, and currently 35 of our elementary schools are part of Art Trek. And she has electronic art lessons available, and she would love to offer that to other schools. So, Geri, we will definitely be getting in touch with you about that. We would love to talk about expanding that. That sounds great. So thank you. And then we have a question for Antonio. This is from Alex Chacon of Salesian High School. His question is, how can our schools further support Place Core moving forward? Our Place Core teachers have been incredible in the past, but they leave us due to the rising costs to live in Los Angeles. Is there any chance the program might be expanded to include additional benefits for placers beyond the 2-year program?
Yeah, great question, Alex. One of the things that we were working on and making a lot of progress in was the teachers that we recruit for Place Core are throughout the nation. So we get 20 to 30 teachers a cohort, and they range from many states throughout the U.S. So one of the issues we sometimes have is that after their third-year commitment, because there's a 2-year commitment, but about 98% of our teachers stay a third year. But beyond that, they tend to go back home or find other, look for other opportunities. So one of the things that we started moving forward was having, working with a parish to have a convent for our placers to go after their place core commitment. So essentially like a third year where they get to have low cost housing with other Catholic school teachers. And it's something we were going to also extend to our CAST teachers who would be able to embrace that intentional community living aspect. So that's one way in which we hope to retain them. We were making a lot of progress, and then of course this happened. But it's an idea that we have, and we have some partners and donors who are very interested in supporting that. So we're hopeful to see that vision come true soon.
Thank you. That's awesome. Just as a clarification for anybody who's unfamiliar with Place Course, so we've got their novice teachers who are in a master's program, but they live together in community in converted commons. So it's like it's a little better than a dorm setting, but but it's a convent where they have their own space and shared spaces for community, which keeps the cost down for a teacher attending graduate school and also allows them to connect with a lot of other teachers. Now, I have Catherine Fraser, who is the Executive Director of Development for the Archdiocese. Catherine, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Sure. I was reading an article in the Times about the difficulty that college campuses are having with admissions for next year. And I'm just curious if you foresee that to be an issue because students can't visit the schools and obviously the financial issues as well. And are there any thoughts about how schools can combat these issues as it relates to admissions for next year, doing virtual tours or things like that?
I know at the undergrad level, the admissions team has done a wonderful job at providing that. One of them is virtual tour opportunities. But in terms of the graduate programs that I'm involved with, we thankfully do our recruitment early on. So we were able to get commitments from the teachers that we're going to be placing into Catholic schools. Because we are off-site residences, it really won't impact us that much. Our students didn't have to leave their communities because they live there. However, the challenge is going to be bringing them in. We don't know yet when we will be able to open up our doors to our new cohort that will be starting in June. And we'll likely have to do online learning for that first summer session, which is typically at LMU. For the first 2 weeks, we house them there to create community bonding and also to inculturate them into the graduate level work. So that's going to be something we're working on now. But we're hopeful that one, that we will have jobs for them, because that's also going to be a challenge. We have to make sure we have jobs to put these wonderful teachers who have signed on to do this service-oriented program for the next couple of years. Then secondly, be able to move them into their convent with the rising first-year teachers. So at the undergraduate level, I'm not too sure what's going on, but I know that for us, we're going to have to get creative as to how we can continue to engage them and then make the community pillar as important as it always has been.
I'd like to invite Paul to say something. I know you mentioned, Paul, there was a school that had 35 new families, which is awesome. Do you know if they were doing virtual tours or do you have any tips or, have you seen any innovative ways of marketing and inviting families to enroll in Catholic schools?
So I'm an old school guy, and old school in this case is the tried and true word of mouth. It is parents, and our kids. Of course, our faculty who speaks volumes as well. But there's nothing more powerful than your parents and your kids talking to their friends, their colleagues about the great experiences they're having. Conversely, it could also kill a school. If your parents are not happy, your parents are more than likely to exponentially share how unhappy they are about the experience they're having at their particular school. So for all that we have done to invest in online programs, and this varies as you get into high school and of course into post-secondary spaces, the competition magnifies quite a bit, and you do have to compete on those levels, no question. But when I think about the local parish school and the experiences that people are having at their parish school, and this is a parish school I'm speaking of. It's parents, it's kids, and sharing out their stories and using platforms like social media and YouTube to share out, and within their local networks, sharing those stories, and people just saying, oh my gosh, look at what they're doing. Oh my gosh, they're doing STEM, they're doing dual language immersion, they're doing, they're advancing, instruction during a time when a lot of kids are just, either trying to figure out on their own or repeating a lesson they had, 2 months ago. Parents pick up on that and they're willing to make a move as a result. So I think that the old tried and true word of mouth, spreading good news and stories about what you're doing, particularly right now, as people are connecting differently, is extraordinarily powerful when it comes to retention and when it comes to recruitment.
Thank you. Okay, so we're almost out of time, but we have 2 more in the queue. So Minerva Munguia Sanchez from St. Alphonsus asks, Mr. Escala, please clarify, are we returning to school after April 19th or continuing distance learning?
So on April 3rd, we had sent out a communication to all of our schools. And this has also been posted on the Archdiocesan website. On April 3rd, our message that went out is based upon the pending extension of the safer at home orders by public health officials, notwithstanding public policy officials and their statements about the school year, that we would return to in-person instruction when it is deemed safe by public health officials. And as a result of that indefinite sort of environment, or the fluidity of the environment we're in right now, that the reality is that it's less likely, though we remain hopeful that we see a break in this, but it's less likely that we will be resuming in-person instruction, certainly as we knew it a month ago, for the remainder of this school year. And so the reason why that's a little nuanced, and I think it's important that people realize what a vast expanse the Archdiocese has. We are in 3 different counties. We are in over 70 school districts in over 100 different municipalities. Some municipalities have their own public health offices, like Long Beach, Los Angeles, and Pasadena, for example. And the impact of the COVID-19 crisis has been different in those areas and different counties. And unlike Michigan or New York or other states where their governors have made blanket orders on schools, both public and private, California's been different. Governor Newsom has elected to allow local municipalities, counties, and local officials to make those decisions as needed. So here in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, the reality for what's happening in Santa Maria or Lompoc is different than it is in Laverne or Lancaster or Long Beach. Those are just realities of the expanse that we serve. And so it wouldn't be prudent for us to say coming back looks the same for everyone or is on the same schedule as everyone. But what we did say in that communication, and I encourage you to go on to the Archdiocesan website under the main page in the COVID-19 button to look for this letter. We clearly outlined that we will return when it is deemed safe by public health officials. We remain in close contact with them, and that we have to prepare for the likelihood that we will not be returning back to in-person instruction. But we need to also make sure that we honor our families, we honor our staff, we honor our kids with the traditional milestones that they are that they want to have and want to experience, such as graduation and prom and grad night and all these things that have been a function of our traditions in schools, even our of course our sacraments, and kindergarten promotion and 8th grade promotion. So working with our principals on this is really where we want to be, and want to provide guidance to everyone as a result of the next couple of weeks conversations about how they might be looking to celebrate these important milestones and finish the school year strong. We want to be in a position to provide that guidance, and also want to see where things are 2 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now. Gosh, it would be wonderful, even in a very modified and small way, to bring folks, at least in relatively same space, even at a distance with a mask on, to say hello to one another, to have a moment together. That is a hope. But we also have to deal with certain realities, and those realities are becoming clearer as the days go on, and as the Safer at Home extension continues on through at least May 15th. So stand by for more to come, but please take a look at the website, and you can see the language in the letter. And I apologize if you did not receive that. We did get that out to all of our schools and our principals, and if you didn't, we want to be sure that you're on the correct email address, presuming that you're a school leader. So thank you.
Geri Wendel wanted to make a comment. Geri, I just unmuted your mic, so you're welcome to speak right now.
Great. You can hear me okay?
We sure can.
Great. Okay. So I just want to first of all say hi. I think several of our Catholic Ed Foundation schools are online here, and some of our Specialty Family Foundation schools as well. So these little art lessons we have been providing to 35 of the schools that we train at Bishop Conity a few times a year, and of course Antonio Felix, we've been at Nativity forever. But we're sending them out on Mondays and Thursdays, and you don't have to follow along online. You get the instruction, and then you can turn away from the screen. These kids are on the screen enough. So we intentionally wanted to provide lessons. They did not have to be engaged online for them. Turn away from the screen and do them. And we're providing them in English and Spanish. And we've changed the materials to materials we hope that these kids have in their homes. We obviously can't do a chalk lesson or even a painting lesson. So we welcome any schools that would like these lessons. We would like to offer them. Katie, you can give out our email address to any school that wants to reach out to you. It's very simple. It's just info@arttrek.org, ARTTREK. So it's been great for families because older siblings can do these as well, and younger siblings. Those of you who know our program, it's the same lesson, but it can be simplified for the younger ones, and the older kids take it to a place we never even imagined. So we are happy to provide those to any school that reaches out to us or to you, Katie, for these lessons.
Thank you, Geri. All right, so thank you all for bearing with us. We went a little bit over time, but I can see that nearly everybody stuck around, so thank you so much. And I wanted to thank Paul, Sandra, and Antonio for joining us today and for their service and commitment to our Catholic schools. And we had one more comment that I think it was Gabby said thank you and wanted to know if we were going to do this ever again, and the answer is yes. So, and next week we're going to be joined by Alex Chacon. He's the president of Salesian High School, and Karina Moreno Corgan, who's the president of Dolores Mission Elementary School, and they're neighbors in Boyle Heights. And you can RSVP in just the same way at cefdn.org/coffee. And as always, I want to thank you all for your support, especially during this time. And as we heard from our leaders today, that the school closures, they don't mean that class is canceled, because the kids are still going, their kids are still having class, they're still being educated, and they're still being gathered and engaged in community in new and different ways. But it does mean that individual schools' fundraising activities this year had to be postponed or canceled, and that many families are out of work or may be out of work soon, and are, especially families that faced hardship before, are really facing extreme hardship now. And if you can give right now, please visit our website. It's CEFDN.org, because 100% of your donations to CEF are going to fund the tuition awards program that gives tuition awards to the lowest income children in elementary school and high school in our archdiocesan schools. And also, if you'll see on our website, we have a link for the Archdiocese of Los Angeles's COVID-19 fund, which supports schools and parishes in need who have been greatly adversely affected by this crisis. So thank you again for coming. We're so thrilled to be able to do this and to be able to gather our friends remotely during this time. And we hope to see you again on next Wednesday. And if you have any questions for our guests next week before the event, you can email me at kkevorkian@cefdn.org anytime before next week's event if you want to get your question in the queue first. So thank you again so much, and we look forward to seeing you